Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cajon City Council meeting. Now that we have resumed in-person meetings, we encourage people to participate in person. If, however, you would rather submit an online comment, please know that online comments will be accepted only until 12 o'clock p.m. on the day of the meeting. Comments may be submitted through the City of El Cajon's website, which is cityofElCajon.us, under Agendas and Minutes. The meeting is called to order, and I'd like to ask our city clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick is absent. All other council members are present.
Would you all please then stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a brief moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The city clerk posted orders of adjournment of the August 10th, 2021 meeting and the agenda of the September 14th, 2021 meeting in accordance with state law, council, and housing authority policy. We have two presentations on today's agenda, and I'd like to invite Fire Chief Steve Swaney to share with us about Emergency Preparedness Month. Chief?
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and Council. I'm here today before you to remind you that September is National Preparedness Month. I'm just going to give you kind of a brief overview of some of the things that you can do to make sure that you and your family are prepared in case we have some sort of an event that cuts off your food supply or your ability to provide for certain things. So we all kind of know the risk of what goes around. Things all you do is turn on the news channel right now. We got wildfire up in Northern California. We got floods on the East Coast. Luckily, we don't have any earthquakes going on right now, and we'll just keep our fingers crossed for that. But we know because we live in California that we could be prone to having some earthquakes. The other new surprise thing that we have going on is shutting off electricity. What are we going to do if our electricity is shut off for days at a time? How are we going to get through that point? So we've got some man-made and we have some natural disasters that can cause us the need to be prepared. So the first thing that you can do to be prepared is to make a plan. And that plan should have some sort of a plan for you and your family. Make sure that everybody knows what it is, that you come up with a good evacuation plan, that you have a meeting place where you're going to meet up, and not like out in the front yard, but if people are not at home, they're at work, and you have to leave an area or something like that, where are you going to meet up? And maybe have a couple of them. You know, this is our first choice and this is our second choice, and make sure that people know, you know, where they're at and how they're going to go ahead and get there. A communications plan. How are you going to communicate with each other if the cell phones aren't working, or if maybe you haven't been able to charge your cell phone? What are you going to do? You know, how are you going to communicate with each other? It's always good to have an out-of-area contact, a family contact, maybe out of state, because you know one person can phone in and let that person know that everybody's okay, and then the rest of the family can call that person where the system hasn't been impacted. So that's always a good idea to have that in place. Children, if you're, you know, the incident happens when you have school-age kids, how are you going to retrieve your kids? How are you going to get them, reunite them with you and your family and get them to a safe place so that you can take care of them? And you can't forget your pets. You know, you got, you know, whatever kind of animals that you have, hopefully they're small and you can take them with you, and, you know, you're not trying to move livestock around, but, you know, make sure you got a plan for your dogs and your cats and that kind of stuff. Not just how you're going to transport them, but make sure you have food for them as well. It's a good idea to have all your documents stored electronically so that you can easily access them, and you know, in that way they don't take up a lot of space in your car or something like that if you have to leave. Something that a lot of people don't carry around with them anymore is cash. It's always a debit card that they think that's going to get them through whatever they need, but when there's no power or things aren't working, the internet's down, you're not going to be able to buy anything. So make sure that you got emergency cash with you. And make sure that you have small bills. Last thing you want to do is have to pay $20 for a gallon of water from the store. So make sure that you have some small bills with you so that people aren't taking advantage of the fact that you do have some cash. And if all possible, always make sure that you have more than a half a tank of gas of fuel in your vehicle, because if something bad happens here in San Diego County and nothing's going on in one of our neighboring counties or our neighboring areas, you can always just get in your car and try to relocate to some place where it's not impacted. So always try to have that gas available in case the gas stations aren't working and you can't get gas. So the next thing you do is build a kit, and depending on the size of your family and depending on your preferences and stuff, is start looking at building a kit. Kits can get expensive to build. Like if you made a list and wanted to go out and build one all at once right now, you could probably spend a couple $1,000s building a kit. But if you just started by, once a week when you go to the grocery store, buy an extra can of food, something like that, before you know it, you're going to have a pretty good kit built up that didn't cost you a lot of, one-time investment for it. So obviously, you always have to make sure that you got food and water. Make sure that you got at least 3 days of food and water, because that's usually typically about the time then resources start coming in to help people. So, it's about a gallon per person of water per day. You can live without food, can't live without water. So make sure that you have plenty of water. Try to have some flashlights with extra batteries. Better yet, they have some flashlights that are kind of either hand cranked or that don't require batteries that you can replenish. They don't work as well, but you don't have to have the batteries to make sure that those are constantly working. Again, your important documents, have that thumb drive or have the documents electronically. Obviously, make sure you have some clothes and shoes, and your personal hygiene items that you need. It's kind of funny. They recommend that if you have to bug out of your house really quick and grab your clothes, go to your dirty clothes hamper, because those are all clothes that you would normally wear on a regular basis, and you might have to try to find some way to get them clean or something like that. But you're not going to have to try to go through and say, oh, what am I going to pack? You've packed everything you've worn for the last 3 days, unless you just did laundry. So that's always a good way to get what you need as far as clothes wise. Additional needs, hearing aids, mobility aids, canes, walkers, glasses, contacts, whatever it is that you need to do to get around and do things. Again, the pet care items, make sure you got some food for your pet, your medications. And it's a good idea when you have your kit to go ahead and rotate some of those perishable items, even some of the toiletries like your ibuprofen and Advil and stuff like that has an expiration date on it. As you get to the point where you're buying more, go in there and take the stuff out of your kit and replace it with the newer stuff. So don't forget to rotate your perishables. Prepare your children. Teach your children what to do in case there's an emergency. If you're home or if you're even away, someplace else. How are we gonna get through this, and what are we gonna do? Let them help you with the plan. They're pretty creative, and they'll tell you what they need, and get them involved with packing some of their stuff and the things that they want to take with you. Again, review that communications plan. If it may even be simple as that, hey, if we have to go someplace, we're going to leave you a handwritten note. I know that's kind of a novel concept today. It's like, hey, I'll just shoot you a text or something like that. But if you have to go someplace, a handwritten note will probably work just fine, and let them know where you're going to go if things aren't working. Let the kids build their own little kit, things that's important to them. That kind of gives them a little bit of comfort if something were to happen. And then see what the kids' schools plan are. What are their emergency plans? How are they going to release the kids? Are they going to release the kids? Who they're going to release the kids to? And kind of what their plan is to get the kids off of campus to reunited or to a safe place until you get reunited with them. So after the disaster, there's a lot of stuff with some financial recovery. Say you had your house destroyed by an earthquake or a fire or a flood or something like that. You're going to want to have some sort of insurance evaluation and to come out annually and reevaluate the cost of your house. A lot of times we don't pay attention to that year after year. We just renew our policy, but we don't up the value of the belongings or the structure itself and make it so that if something did happen, we could be made whole. So it's a good idea to inventory your possessions, either through pictures, any type of documentation that you can have, video, that type of thing, and look at your things that are very valuable to you. If you collect art, different collections that we have for antiques and that kind of thing have a little bit higher of value. So make sure that you get those categorized and stuff in that inventory. Make sure that you have additional living expenses in case something takes a little bit longer. You get put up in a hotel or be able to rent a house, that type of thing. So it makes it a little bit easier on you as part of your insurance. And again, there's a common theme: store documents electronically. So if you have them on that thumb drive, you have them so they're easily accessible. You can access them a little bit more than trying to carry a file cabinet around and trying to search through, and hopefully you find what it is. And again, there's that emergency cash thing again, right? Make sure you got that cash on you. Most people don't carry cash now, but again, small denominations so that you can get by. We have plenty of preparedness resources out there through the website. You can go to harlanfire.org, and there's lots of tips on emergency preparedness. The County of San Diego has a lot of materials on it. ReadySanDiego.org and also Ready.gov have a lot of resources on there that can help you plan and get a kit together and then help you with some of the insurance and things like that. Another great way to get involved in preparedness is join some of the people that are going to come out and help during the time of need. So you got East County CERT. Harlan Fire and Rescue is a sponsor of East County CERT, and we kind of maintain that program. A great program. There's more information on our website. American Red Cross, the Amateur Radio Emergency Services, the Fire Safe Council, and Salvation Army are all great organizations to be part of to help in time of need and to be able to help your neighbors when there's something that's going on. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. Again, just a quick reminder, it's Preparedness Month and things that you can do to be prepared. So if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Let me see if there's questions.
All right,
Well, thanks,
thank you very
Chief.
much.
It's a good reminder. All right, next we have a commendation for a fire rescue, and I'd like to ask our city manager to tell us about this.
Mr. Mayor, the 5 gentlemen that were to receive the commendation were not able to make it today, so we're going to push this presentation off to the next meeting if that's okay with the council.
Okay, that's fine. Just to tell everybody what happened, if you didn't see it, a couple of gentlemen from East County Transitional Living Center saved a couple that was burning in their car, and they went in and saved them. So it was pretty exciting. We'll get them that commendation next time. All right, staff, do you have any agenda changes?
Mr. Mayor, we have no changes to the agenda.
How about council members? All right. That brings us to the consent items. Consent items are routine matters enacted by one motion according to the recommendation listed below. With the concurrence of the City Council, a council member or person in attendance may request discussion of a consent item at this time. Council members, do you want to pull any of the consent items? How about staff?
No, sir.
Angela, do we have any comments on consent?
We received no comments, sir.
Okay. Then I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent items. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
All right, we're now at public comment. At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments related to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, City Council and Housing Authority members may briefly respond to statements or questions, and an item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, do we have any speaker cards for the public comment?
Yes, sir. We received one card from Michael Harris.
Hi, Michael. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I have some documents for you all here. If I can present them, please.
Give to the clerk.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Harris. I live at 1345 Partridge Avenue in El Cajon. 5 years ago, when I purchased my condo, it came with a set of stairs going from our dining room down into the garage. This was annotated on all the paperwork in the previous owner, and that there was nothing stated that it was not permitted or anything was improper. In April, I received a letter from Code Compliance stating that I had to remove the stairs and return the unit to how it was built. This stems from one of my neighbors installing a set of stairs, and after being told no by the homeowners association, he decided to do so anyways, submitted an architectural change to the management company, which is Keystone Inland. Keystone contacted the city and asked if a permit had been issued. There was no permit that could be found. The owner was told that he had to undo what he had been done by Code Compliance. He then contacted the city and demanded that I receive a letter to remove, or an order to remove the stairs that had been installed in the late 1970s. There was a wall that separates the stairs leading down from the garage and the stairs. That wall has 5/8 thick sheetrock and a self-closing door in compliance with the fire code. I have numerous communications with LC Wright from code compliance regarding this, and I've been told they am in violation of zoning code 17.185.030, which states the garage has to be 20 by 20 since it's a two-car garage. This is using measurements from cars from the 1970s, which are longer and needed the extra room. Today, most cars are smaller than 16 foot. I've been told that I cannot park two cars in the garage because the measurements of 16 by 10 on one side and 20 by 10 on the other. The couple that had the unit before me parked two cars in the garage. I currently have a side-by-side, two motorcycles, and a trailer currently parked inside there. And as you can see from the pictures in the packet, I can park a car in there. I've also been told that the complex is non-conforming because there's no additional parking for guests. If I wanted to, I cannot park my 22-foot long truck in the garage, period. I have to park out on the street no matter what. The last comment that was made to me that was if I did not revert my garage back to the original state that the city could be sued. I'm not sure why I was told this, and I did not think that it was an appropriate comment at the time. I repeatedly asked if there's a process to get a waiver or variance, and I have been told no, that the code is controlled by the city council, and that is why I'm here. For me to get the required permit that I would need to go ahead and revert the garage back, it's at least $5,000 just to get the architectural drawing, and then $10,000 to $15,000 to do the work. If I end up having to do this, it would have to mean I would have to sell my house, and I would have to use most of that money that I would get from selling it to get this fixed. All I'm doing is I'm actually respectfully asking for a waiver or a variance so that I can go ahead and keep this. And as you can see, I've included in there, I'm sorry. The stairs are merely convenience to get into the garage. They are by no means an emergency egress to exit the house. I've put a copy of the morning notice, timetable of the events, copy of the code, pictures of a car parked in there, emails between myself and the city, and there's also the paperwork from my realtor showing that when I bought it, there was absolutely nothing out of the ordinary with it. That's all I have. If you have any questions, please.
Well, let me see if there's any questions from the council. Anybody? Michelle?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So far from the time this was put in the 70s until your neighbor brought the attention to the planning department, there's never been any problem.
No.
When you purchased the home, there was an inspection.
Yes, and that inspection report is right there.
And have you refied the home and they do another inspection or anything?
I have, yes.
And nothing's been brought up at that time?
Nothing has ever been brought up about it until my neighbor complained that he couldn't keep his stairs. This was done in the 1970s.
Right.
I was still in high school at the time.
A lot of us were. What about the planning? Do we have anyone from the planning department here that can speak to this?
Mr. Mayor, I can briefly comment on it.
Yeah,
One,
please.
I can provide the council a more in-depth memo because this is not on the agenda. But first of all, it's my understanding that the council does not have the ability to waive building codes. That's set by the state of California. That's been adopted by the city council. So I don't think there's a lot of leeway that we have here. It's my understanding that our building official actually has drawn up a solution for Mr. Harris. We think it'll cost about $1,500. Doesn't even require permits. So he has sort of that sketch. So where we're stuck right now is if we were to sort of turn a blind eye and someone would be injured in the future, that's where we would be sued because we're liable now because we did not enforce a known violation of the building code. But like I said, I can provide a little bit more detail to the city council, and we'll continue to work with Mr. Harris to look for a solution.
My question is, what is the injury part? What is the problem that could cause injury? Because I'm not understanding what the problem is. There's stairs.
So you have some immunity when someone builds a home and it's built to code. You have some immunity in the event that there is a default as long as it's built to code. If the city were to inspect a property knowingly knowing it's not up to code, and whatever many years later on an injury does occur, the staircase falls down, someone is injured or killed, because the city did not enforce the code, we would have liability for that death. That therein lies the city's liability.
But that's what I'm asking. What is the liability that we're discussing? What is the problem?
In the event there's an injury or a death because of faulty construction.
See, if I,
So the stairs are constructed are not
They're not
constructed properly?
they're not up to code. That's correct.
Okay.
that makes sense.
Again, this is not an agenda item, so we really shouldn't go much beyond this, but I can provide the council a memo, and we'll continue to work with Mr. Harris. And if the council wants to agendize it, we can do that at a later date.
So what do we have to do now? I mean, we're
You have no authority over this matter right now because it's not on the agenda.
okay.
Right, I appreciate that. Just out of curiosity, what are we looking at in terms of fees from the city?
I don't know where we're at with that right now.
Okay. It'd be nice to get caught up with a memo on that afterwards. Mr. Harris, please work with staff and see if we can find some kind of solution. If you don't feel like you're getting something that works for you, then you can contact any one of us and we'll agendize it and bring it before the council.
The last time I had gone to talk to anybody was August 2nd. I was told I'd get a phone call immediately soon thereafter. This is September 14th. I am yet to receive any correspondence, period.
Well,
if there's a plan to work this out with me, it's news to me.
Well, it's kind of escalated now. Everybody's aware of it. I think I have a lot of faith in Graham that he will, somebody will get a hold of you very quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Harris. I appreciate it.
No more comments, sir.
Okay. There are no written communications and no public hearings on today's agenda. We have 6 administrative reports on today's agenda. Item 11 is regarding a San Diego County ordinance named Working Families, and I'll ask our city manager to tell us about this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Earlier this summer in July, the County Board of Supervisors considered a draft ordinance that was prepared and presented by a board member or Supervisor Lawson Reamer, and it was also presented by Chair Nathan Fletcher. The ordinance is entitled right now Working Families Ordinance, and the Board of Supervisors directed staff to get public input, draft an ordinance, and bring it back for consideration, and it's scheduled currently for the October 5th meeting. City staff has participated in several of the workshops that have been made available, and we have worked with many of the businesses around Gillespie Field, and we're at a point right now where we feel like we're prepared to present a resolution of opposition to this ordinance. So I wanted to talk about the word unfair just for a moment and talk about how staff believes that this ordinance is actually inherently unfair. If you look up the definition of unfair, it says it's an adjective, and it's not based on or behaving according to the principles of equity or justice. What I think about is, when I hear that word, I think of Michael Turco. It ain't right. And I think that's what we feel about this ordinance. It just ain't right. It stinks. It's unfair to many communities, but it's especially unfair to the city of El Cajon. And what I wanted to do today is go through and talk about what this ordinance says, what its impact is going to be on our community, why staff's recommending its opposition, and then what are some steps that can be done in the future. So one of the things that this does is, when you think about the concept of unfairness, it really, I guess something that would be fair is if there's a need to fulfill a goal in the community, everybody in the community participates in fulfilling that goal. This ordinance does the exact opposite, and I'll share what it does after I explain the ordinance. But what this does is this ordinance would apply to any county property, whether it be an airport property, and we'll talk about that, a county park, county open space that's used for agricultural purposes, any property that the county operates, there would be a requirement for those that lease or sublease that property to pay prevailing wage to their employees, or a living wage, or whatever is higher, and where it's unknown to whatever that higher wage could be. It also requires that a skilled and trained workforce be utilized, although the ordinance does not define what skilled and trained workforce means. It also requires that the employer provide 56 hours of annual sick leave. Just note that the state minimum is 48 hours, so this is above and beyond what the state requires. And in many cases, gig workers or one-time event workers, there's really no way to figure out how to justly compensate for 8 hours of work time to accommodate sick leave. So there's some inherent flaws just with the ordinance itself. And it would also require any future lessees, if they're doing any capital improvements over $500,000, to use prevailing wage on the entire job. Or if it's a single craft project, so if you're not using a general contractor, you're just using, let's say, an HVAC repair person to replace your HVAC, that's called a single craft project. Anything over $25,000 would require prevailing wage and skilled and trained workforce. In other words, union laborers. So staff does not, we're not here to debate whether that's a good policy or bad policy, that there are better wages and more sick leave available to those that are doing jobs throughout the county. That's not what we're here to talk about. We're really here to talk about the disproportionate impact that this policy, that this ordinance has specifically on the city of El Cajon. So one of the things that the staff report identifies is that of about the 1,000 acres of industrial or manufacturing land that exists in the city of El Cajon, about half of that is actually owned and controlled and leased out by the county of San Diego. Over 300 businesses lease property from the county that we call our businesses, that generate income for our city, that generate jobs for our city, and employ about 3,500 employees based on our business license records. So that's a pretty significant employment center. And in fact, if you look at Sandag, they have an analysis of all the major employment centers in San Diego County, and Gillespie Field is one of those primary employment centers that San Diego, or that Sandag considers to be critical to our region. I just mentioned that 50% of the city's industrial and manufacturing land is owned and controlled by San Diego. The scary part, the unfair part, the thing that makes us concerned is that a minimum of 3 supervisors that don't even represent El Cajon have the ability to influence 50% of the city's industrial land. That's a pretty significant issue, and that, again, meets the definition of unfairness in staff's mind. Looking at just the airport properties, we won't address the impacts that this has on, let's say, someone that's operating a 5K race at a county-owned park. And now they were going to hire a friend that does DJing. Now they would actually have to hire a full-on company to do that kind of work. So everything in costs, in terms of cost, goes up. We won't talk about that. We won't talk about the farmer that leases open space land from the county that pays their employees with room and board, because that won't be allowed under this provisions. We won't talk about that either. I just want to focus on the airport leased land that exists in the city of El Cajon. These are all the airport leases and subleases that the county operates. As you can see, 60% of all the leases that the county possesses are in the city of, or around Gillespie Field. Most of those are in the city of El Cajon. 32% are in Carlsbad as part of the Palomar-McClellan Airport. So 92% of the airport leases exist primarily in 2 cities. So again, if you ignore the value or the lack of value of higher wages for employees, that's irrelevant. But the fact that two cities are taking the brunt of paying for this program is, again, inherently unfair to El Cajon and, to a lesser degree, Carlsbad. So just to summarize the big negative impacts that staff feels comes from this ordinance. One, it marginalizes the largest employment center in East County, and it kills a 500 job opportunity in the warehouse project that was being prepared by Chestnut Development. It also disproportionately impacts communities of color and disadvantaged communities in our community and in the region. And it also has the ability, it has the chances that it'll increase greenhouse gas emissions. And so we'll talk about each of those three things quickly. So in terms of marginalizing our employment center, one, it makes any company that leases county land have more expensive operational costs. So if you make a widget and you happen to be located in El Cajon and lease land from the county at market rate, and your competitor leases land from a non-county property in the city of Encinitas, you now operate at a disadvantage because your costs have gone up. And so what does that mean? Either you go out of business, or most likely you would relocate your business when the opportunity comes. Why would you stay here and pay 15, 16% more in costs than if you could move down the street and pay less? What it does also, when you increase the cost to do business and you increase the cost to develop land, you've actually reduced the ability to do development, ultimately changing best and highest uses to lower uses. So you go from having let's say a warehouse project that's going to generate 500 jobs to a tow yard that will generate 5 jobs and be a blight in the community. That's the kind of shift that occurs as you devalue land. That's a concern to the city of El Cajon. We think that it places the businesses that are located specifically in El Cajon at a disadvantage to their competitors outside that are playing by a completely different set of rules than our businesses have to pay. So in other words, we believe that the Working Families Ordinance clearly is unfair to the city of El Cajon because it marginalizes our largest employment center in East County, and it puts a disproportionate burden on the city of El Cajon. We also think that it disproportionately impacts communities of color and disadvantaged communities. Here's just a couple data points. El Cajon's unemployment rate is 40% higher than the region. Our low income is, our income, our median household income is 27% less. Our number of low income individuals is almost 50% higher. Our educational attainment is 43% less than the county average. We have a higher percentage of our housing stock as apartments, and we have almost double the number of renters in our community than the region. We clearly have a need for jobs in our community, and if the County Board of Supervisors were to adopt this ordinance, they thwart our ability to provide jobs for our residents. Looking at a survey that was prepared by an economist that looked at Gillespie Field and Palomar and did a survey of businesses, it was they identified between 59 and 67% of the employees are non-white or those of color. So this has a disproportionate effect on communities of color as well. This is I'll go through a few graphs that show some interesting statistics region-wide. This graph shows how COVID impacted employment in the region. As you can see, El Cajon there in purple. If you can't see my clicker with the light, but you know where El Cajon is. You can see that we're one of the highest impacted regions from an employment perspective as a result of COVID. And so just as we're emerging out of COVID, the County of San Diego pushes us back down. We have a more racially diverse community, the most racially diverse community in all of East County. We also have one of the highest concentrations of lowest income individuals in all of East County. So if if you believe in, feels that if you believe in ensuring that communities of color and disadvantaged communities have a leg up, then you should be opposed to the Working Families Ordinance. The last concern that we have is a housing jobs balance. And if you look at the San Diego Forward, the 2021 regional plan, if you look at most climate action plans, there's a goal to ensure that there are jobs located close to housing. That way, people aren't traveling all over the county to get to their jobs, hence reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And a Sandag study from 2016 identified that 14% of the employed residents, 14% work in El Cajon. Only 14%, very small amount. So almost all of our residents commute outside of the city of El Cajon. In other words, we have a job imbalance in East County. Fortunately, that industrial park helps accomplish much of the little bit of balance that we have is because of that industrial park. This map right here shows where our residents go to work. And as you can see, they travel all over the county and to the larger employment centers in downtown San Diego and Sereno Valley, up into the Golden Triangle area. That's where our residents are going. And our concern, staff's concern, is that if businesses have to look for new places to go, they're just going to go to those places. This map shows how our residents get to those places. Now, if you've traveled on the 52 in the morning, or the 8, or the 125, or 94, you don't need a map to tell you where the cars are, because this is the most congested freeways in the county. Interestingly, it's all coming out of where? East County. Sandag has spent very little resources on our county, on our portion of the county, where they spent more resources on other parts of the county. This problem, this ordinance actually exasperates the current condition that we have right now. I wanted to show this last map, and this will be the last map I show you. This actually shows who comes in to employment, to receive employment in the city of El Cajon. You can see that we attract a lot of East County residents that come into our own city for employment. Imagine if a lot of those folks are now traveling back outside, congesting those freeways more. That will contribute more greenhouse gas to the San Diego region, to the environment, completely undermining all the efforts that the county is making to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So if you want a cleaner environment, you clearly, and less congestion on freeways and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, this is an ordinance that you should not be supporting. So who do we think should oppose this? We think that our regional partners of MTS and Sandag should oppose this. And in fact, this ordinance is the antithesis of their ultimate goals. And so staff would call on MTS board members and Sandag board members to look at this and to oppose this ordinance and encourage the Board of Supervisors to oppose this, because this undermines, like I said, all the work that they've been trying to do. If you believe in protecting the environment, you should oppose this ordinance. Communities of color should be outraged by this ordinance. Immigrant communities should be fearful and feel more vulnerable because of this ordinance. And the business community and any rational thinking person in this county should oppose this. I'm really happy to announce that just today we received a letter of opposition to this ordinance from the San Diego County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. They see that this will have a disproportionate impact on communities of color, specifically Latin-owned and women-owned businesses in the region. And this is a bad thing for businesses. So with that, staff would recommend that the City Council adopt the resolution of opposition that's been prepared and as part of the report. We would also encourage the council to work with staff in helping to develop a coalition of interest groups that would oppose this ordinance. We would recommend that we actually hold a press conference and get in front of the news. I would recommend closer to the October date that the Board of Supervisors will be seeing this, and that we provide testimony that the Board of Supervisors clearly understands that this is a disproportionate impact on El Cajon, that we're bearing more burden than anyone else in the county is. And if the county wants to do this, there should be a more fair and equitable way of achieving this goal. So with that, staff's here to answer any questions. I do believe there are some public comments about this, but we're here to answer any questions that you may have.
Counsel?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment, if that's allowable.
Go ahead.
So I just feel that the county looks at El Cajon as sort of a cash cow. We get an inordinate amount of things dumped on us that we have to take care of. We have, and I don't mean, we have sex offenders dumped out in East County, El Cajon. We have, and I'm not saying they're being dumped out here, but we have a large number of immigrants out here that need work, that need support. El Cajon has some room to grow in some respect out here in East County, and it seems like the county is just constantly pounding on El Cajon to get more money out of us, and I'm thoroughly against this resolution. It affects my district extremely hard. I'm just appalled, and please let me know if there's something else I can do.
I have a couple questions for staff. Thanks for the presentation, Graham. That was great. One thing I think might be helpful is to maybe define and maybe give some numbers for prevailing wage. I've heard, and because it seems like that's the big nail in the coffin for a lot of these businesses, and I've heard definitions of prevailing wage can be an increase in people's hourly rate by about 30%. Am I off in those numbers?
No. There's so many job descriptions. So if you go to the county, if you go to the state of California and just start typing in jobs, which we've done, we've looked up lots of different trades jobs that would be typical people that would be working in the Gillespie Field area, the city of El Cajon. I'll give you an example. A tree trimmer, you could imagine Taylor Guitars has wonderful landscaping. They probably hire a landscape company that they would now have to provide prevailing wage to do the landscaping. A tree trimmer typically makes $16 an hour in the market. If you were to go onto Craigslist and look for a tree trimming job, $16 an hour. Under prevailing wage, it's about $21 an hour. So that is about a 30%. That's about a 30% increase. That we've gone through a lot of different job categories, and that tends to be the amount. Now, what's interesting though is we're in an economy where everyone is having to pay more than minimum wage, and it's pushing wages up. And in fact, a study, and the folks from Gillespie Field could probably comment on it, but they did a survey and they looked at what percentage of folks were making more than $20 an hour, and I don't have that figure in front of me, but it was over 50% were making over $20 an hour. Now, granted, that's still difficult to buy a house, $20 an hour in San Diego County, but it's far above minimum wage because there's a lot of trades jobs in that business district. So that helps answer that question. We do think it could be up to around the 30%.
30%. And I mean, there's a diverse. I used to actually work in the in that Gillespie Field Business Park area. One of my former employers was there, and I want to comment, or maybe the question is, this is going to apply to every business there. So whether you own a sandwich shop or a little coffee cart or an air conditioning company or House of Magnets is a business there where they create magnets for promotional items for other businesses. Every business in that area will be subject to be paying their employees prevailing wage rates.
That's correct. Now, this would kick in for most businesses, unless they have a clause in their lease that would not do that, would kick in when they renew their lease. Again, the survey prepared by the folks around Gillespie Field identified that 61% of the businesses that respond to the survey have less than 5 years on their lease agreement. So there's going to be a big turnover. The other thing that makes it complicated is if you're a national-based business or even a San Diego-based business, let's say Cox Communications. If you have different rates of pay for those that work in El Cajon versus those that maybe have the offices in Kearny Mesa, why would you pay your employees that are doing the exact same job more because they're based out of El Cajon? You would move those folks immediately out of El Cajon to the Kearny Mesa facility. We will see a gutting of our industrial park in less than 5 years.
And so, and you don't have a crystal ball, but talk to me about if the county of San Diego passes this ordinance, I mean, what is that land going to look like? It's going to look like dead land. People are going to vacate it in droves, and we all know what happens to vacant lots in East County. It's homeless encampments. It's going to be dead land. Am I wrong in assuming that?
Well, I don't think that's a wrong assumption, but what it will do for sure, it will change the highest and best use. And right now, if you look at who the tenants in our industrial park are tenants that anyone in the United States would be proud to call home. I mean, Taylor Guitars calls El Cajon home. They call San Diego County home. That's a big deal. They potentially will no longer call California home after this goes into effect.
Yeah, and one of the fears that I have is, Amazon just opened up their huge manufacturing distribution center in Baja California, and Taylor Guitars has plenty of skilled workforce that could just move it across the border, and these are jobs that are leaving our community that are good-paying jobs and moving across the border. It's already been established. The proof of concept is there where, you can have a company established in Baja, and it'll be ultra successful, and all that skilled workforce is moving down there. Those are all the questions I have. I'll save my comments until after public comment.
I get a sense in El Cajon that the county-owned land is a higher percentage of our total land than any other city.
Correct.
So this is a big deal for El Cajon.
Most cities have one or two parcels of county-owned land. So if we didn't have Gillespie Field, for example, we would have county property over here on Magnolia. We have the former assessor's office. That's kind of a typical community. So you could assume most communities, Lemon Grove, for example, has one or two county-owned properties. So that are actually county offices. They're not even leases. So you take out the county-owned properties and say how many have actual lease properties. It could, the majority of cities, it's less than 5. But we have 300.
I don't have a question, but I want to make a comment, especially to the press in the back. It seems clear to me that this is an ordinance by the county designed to attack the city of El Cajon. Now, you have to ask yourself, why are they trying to attack the city of El Cajon? We all know that the county has gone very radical left, woke, and we know that the city of El Cajon is conservative. I contend that this is blatant, pure politics, hardball politics. And I could fight all day long. I don't care what anybody says about me. But they're not attacking me, and they're not attacking the rest of this council. They're attacking the people that are trying to put food on the table in El Cajon. They're taking their woke politics, and they're destroying lives. And I want the San Diego Union to hear me say that, and I sure hope that the editor doesn't pass over that because they're too afraid to have conservative comments that have real commentary. All right, before we go on, I want to see if there's any speaker cards on this item.
Sir, we have 6 comments. The first one is from Jordan Keglovitz.
Hello, council members. My name is Jordan Keglovitz. I am the legal manager at Taylor Guitars, who we've all heard a little bit about today. Taylor Guitars is located in Gillespie Field area, so greatly impacted by this measure, and we thank you for the opportunity to speak about it today. Taylor Guitars has founded and been operating out of the El Cajon, East County area for the past 47 years of our company's history. So I'm here today on behalf of our company to offer our support to the City Council's resolution in opposition of this Working Families Ordinance. And with that, I would like to share a few comments that we have prepared for you guys today. A key tenet of Taylor Guitars is to provide a high standard of living for all of our team members. In San Diego County, our entry-level wage is $16 an hour, which is 14% higher than the minimum wage. Additionally, we have benefits programs including a 401k, bonus structure, paid time off, and we're a newly formed ESOP, which provides employees with ownership benefits, all of which showcase that very intent. Generally speaking, from labor issues to the environment, we have always been happy to comply with county and state mandates in doing our part with the community. And while we agree with the spirit of this ordinance that I don't think anybody necessarily objects, the letter of it places an undue burden on our business. We currently employ more than 500 people within San Diego County. The financial framework of the proposed ordinance would negatively impact our ability to do business, potentially resulting in layoffs, and force us to reconsider operating within the county, or both. Further, we do not feel the county should be dictating how we run our business, nor entertaining an ordinance that gives businesses no indication of what wage requirements may be. This alone makes business planning impossible. Lastly, I would just like to say that since 1974, we have grown from a 3-person guitar shop into the largest and most well-regarded guitar manufacturer in the world. And we're proud to be here in El Cajon. We feel that we have played an important role in the economic contributions to this county and are proud to be as a business leader in this community. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for coming.
Barry Bardak.
Morning, Mayor, council members. Mr. Mitchell covered a lot of stuff I was going to cover, so I'm not going to repeat the stuff he's already covered. Want to give you a little bit more background about how the airport system works and how this is going to harm us seriously. All the revenues that come in from the industrial park go into an airport enterprise fund. That's what's used to operate the airport system. If all the renters that are in the industrial park move out because of this, the major leaseholders are going to not be able to meet their lease requirements, and eventually they'll default on their leases. And again, the whole area will become abandoned, or a good portion of it. So it's extremely harmful. The FAA requires the airport system to be self-sustaining. It is self-sustaining, the whole system, basically because of the industrial park at Gillespie Field. That supports the whole system. There's 8 county airports. Supports them all. If this thing passes, all that's going to go away. And from the FAA's point of view, is it didn't go away because of uncontrolled circumstances. It went away because of change in policy by the county government that made it an abandoned area and made the airport system no longer self-sustaining. They're in violation of FAA grant assurance requirements because of that. So from an FAA point of view, what they're doing is not legal. As the mayor mentioned, and I believe it, it's a job killing, economy killing attack on East County. It's already cost El Cajon City over 400 jobs. Mr. Mitchell already alluded to that. Amazon was negotiating for using this property for a distribution center, and they moved out and abandoned the negotiations because of this. They've already cost us. Yeah, no doubt in my mind, the county is attacking the city of El Cajon. And gentlemen, Lee, you need to put a stop to it somehow. You've got to stop this. This is not a working families ordinance. It's an anti-El Cajon ordinance. The evil of this is just mind-boggling. Okay, it's imperative that you pass a motion to make it clear to the county, not only that you oppose it, but why you oppose it, and make it clear to the news media that this is an attack on the economy of El Cajon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Just a question, do you work for the airport?
Yes, I am a chief flight instructor at Golden State Flying Club based at Gillespie.
Okay.
I've been there for about 19 years as chief instructor.
And how will this affect your business?
It could put us out of business entirely. It's definitely going to cost flight instructor jobs.
Thanks.
Might cost my job.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm sorry.
Rich Bergman.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Rich Bergman. I have a plane at Gillespie Field. I'm retired, and this indicates, if it goes, that we're going to have less money to be able to support how and where we keep our airplanes. And I would like to applaud you for opposing this. The County Board of Supervisors occasionally doesn't have a clear view or understanding of a lot of things, as has been in the press lately. I yield my time.
Thank you, sir.
Dennis Breslin.
Mayor Wells, Council, thank you so much for proposing this opposition to the ordinance. And Graham Mitchell, your assessment is so accurate. I hope that you consider somehow being able to give that presentation, maybe a little shorter, at the Board of Supervisors meeting, because you have all the facts there. When I started laying this out and I read your assessment earlier, I thought, holy mackerel, this is about as good as it gets. This is very deep analysis of the effect on El Cajon itself. Well, my name is Dennis Breslin. I'm the president of the Gillespie Pilots Association, and we've been working very hard with the various allies we have trying to defeat this ordinance. And at the outset, if we can't defeat the darn thing, at least exempt airport properties. And you can see there's an enormous amount of acreage. And the GPA, we had volunteers, and I called for them at a meeting in August, and we walked about a half of the 339 properties. And if you think the occupancy rate is low now, and we found many doors locked, many doors shuttered, darkened places that have been abandoned, I don't know if the county even knows how many of those spaces are even occupied. I don't think they know who. In fact, we have a list of them, and they were woefully out of date. We went and updated those by walking through the properties and talking to the owners. And the disturbing fact was hardly any of those people are going to be affected by this ordinance were aware of it. And those that even heard of it, and we spent a lot of time talking to these people and offering the petition to oppose it, which they did online with the Chestnut Properties and the Land and County Property Coalition's website. And they didn't understand prevailing wage at all. And having been involved in the pilot union of American Airlines for 31 years, I can tell you where prevailing wages come from collective bargaining process with unions. Well, here, the county's trying to force prevailing wage on people that have no ability to negotiate that. And the bottom line is, if you can't negotiate, it is a cram down of standards that don't have any basis and foundation, nor are they connected to the ability of those businesses to pay. They can't accurately assess what it's going to cost them. One FBO at the airport says this will cost them about $600,000 more annually than they're currently paying. They can't afford that. And in fact, some of those FBOs at the airport are down 70% in revenue from COVID from last year, and they're not recovering for various reasons. The price of fuel is sky high. Fuel flowage rates at Gillespie Field are high, so people are flying less. And some of the immigration policies, due to various government issues, preventing foreign pilots from training at Gillespie Field, which is a huge resource. So I hope, Mr. Mitchell, that you'll be able to bring that presentation to the county. That was the most excellent presentation I've ever heard, and it's probably the best collection of facts. And the Gillespie Pilot Association thanks you, number one, for putting this on the agenda, and I'm sure that you're going to pass it. This is devastating for El Cajon. It's devastating for the airport community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Robert Shantz.
Thank you, staff and council members. My name is Robert Shantz. I work with Diversified Properties, and we are one of the land lease owners of the Gillespie Field Business Park. We have, I think we've developed 13 buildings in the park over the last 30 years. It's really the first project I worked on out of college, and it's been exciting. It was a partnership with the County of San Diego to bring employment, much needed employment, to our area. And what Graham went over, I just echo a great presentation. All the facts are laid out. I would just maybe add some color to some of the things. If this ordinance does pass, it's going to just impact the land value of the property. Highest and best use is essentially going to become warehouse with no employees. So there's a need for that, but it's going to drastically reduce the value of the properties, which then in turn will bring, the leases are based off of the land value. So from an economic standpoint, the county will be cutting the amount of revenue that they'll be bringing that supports the airport. So I would just thank you for your support in opposing this. It is just such a vague. A lot of people couldn't even understand what was being required in the ordinance. There are buzzwords like skilled and trained and prevailing wages that are predominantly used in union negotiations. One thing that was interesting as we were talking to some of our tenants is the business park provides a lot of jobs that actually train on-the-job training so that then they have an opportunity to become skilled and advance into higher jobs. And this ordinance would take that out altogether. So it's already just setting a basis for the businesses are either going to leave the park and go maybe next door, maybe they stay in El Cajon if they find private land, but there's just not a lot of product, out there. And it would just be a shame to see the 30 years of hard work that we put in, to this area just be taken away with one pass of this ordinance. So, thank you.
Oh, excuse me, Steve?
I've got a question. So you build buildings that people sublet or lease from you because you're the master.
We have the master lease with
okay.
the county that was negotiated in 1990.
So and is it like a 50-year lease?
It was a 55-year lease at the time, and we have options to renew.
Okay.
The trigger that Graham mentioned is occasionally we have to go to the county if we're getting financing, or when it gets close to the end of the term, we're going to be talking about a renewal of the ground lease term, and that's when all of these burdens will be triggered.
Exactly. So when you build a building for ABC Manufacturing Company to go in, if you're required to pay prevailing rate to build the building, will you get a cut from the county in a reduction of the ground lease that you pay? I kind of doubt it.
I couldn't even figure out how all that's going to work. I don't know how this whole ordinance is going to be managed or enforced.
All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Sir, the last comment was submitted online. It's a lengthy comment, so I'll set the timer and read as much as I can from it. It's from Lee Chestnut, owner of Chestnut Properties and ground lessee of the 30-acre county airport land at Well Boulevard and Cuyamaca Street in El Cajon. And the comment reads, I want to thank each of you for your leadership in engaging a full-scale effort to defeat the proposed family wage ordinance being brought forward by the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. When I encountered direct opposition from this board threatening a new era wage ordinance, as I came to the finish line on my project and was preparing to sign leases, I was devastated and felt alone in the challenge. What I discovered in the weeks following the July 13th hearing was that I was part of a community uprising against this ordinance. Knowing that I was not alone in this has made all the difference in my resolve and stamina in working to help provide a strong, professional, and legally sound opposition. As you all know, our community is filled with great companies and great people who care deeply, even to the point of sacrifice, for every single worker that they employ. This wage fight is not about our commitment to supporting every employee in significant ways, but oddly is about a fight against an ideal that is being mandated by a group of politicians who believe the only way to improve the lives of employees is through laws and mandates from the government. The proposed ordinance is, in my opinion, irresponsible in that the county leadership has put all businesses and ground lessees on notice that a huge change is coming and that will impose new wage costs on all of us. Irresponsible in the sense that the draft language says things like it is prospective and actual wages would be higher of all. applicable wage laws that come at any time in the future. This means that there is no way that any company or ground lessees can predict what will be required and imposed upon them, and therefore any long-term planning becomes impossible. As you know, just the threat of this ordinance has already cost over 400 great jobs for the well property that I have been working on for over 5 years. It has also begun to undermine the confidence business owners have as to their great El Cajon-based businesses. Already what was a normal exercise of an option on a 3,000 square foot industrial lease has resulted in uncertainty, and tenants require their landlord to protect them from an ordinance like this ever taking place. Ironically, I am unable to attend this very important City Council meeting this afternoon due to an amazing opportunity I have to discuss my Eastern Chula Vista Millennia Smart Park development at precisely the same time as you're hearing. I am very concerned that the exact same thing may happen to this incredible project to the broader San Diego community. This threat we face in El Cajon is looming over my other projects, and many other projects other developers have worked so hard to deliver. I share this to illustrate this fight against this unfair and illogical ordinance is a huge fight for me personally and a huge fight for the greater good in our communities and local and regional economies. Our team has submitted high-quality, high-level reports to the county as to the disastrous and immediate economic effect of the proposed ordinance, as well as clear legal memos that point out ordinance conflicts, and it still have maybe about a minute to go, if you'd like.
I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Thank you. That point out the ordinance conflicts with FAA assurances the county has made to the federal government, and a legal memorandum illustrating that the method of implementing this kind of ordinance may very well in direct conflict with state and federal constitutional law. I am officially requesting that if the County Board of Supervisors need to adopt an ordinance, it should be a revised version of this prospective ordinance, only with an exception for all county airports land. With this exception, we will be protected from the proposed ordinance and its effect on the city of El Cajon. I thank you again for your work and commitment to oppose this effort of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. End of comment.
All right, thank you very much. Okay. All right, well, council, any further discussion about this? Yeah. Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle. Okay. Phil?
I'm going to do my best not to get emotional because my anger is boiling over. The level of arrogance that Supervisor Fletcher and Supervisor Lawson-Remer is astonishing. You're going to go into these businesses and tell them that they have to pay their employees this amount. I'm sorry, are you walking into their businesses and looking at their profit and loss statements every month? Are you walking into those businesses and in there working with them, going through their employee reviews every month? Shame on you. After they're trying to pick themselves up, after they're shut down, after COVID ravaged our communities. My tita, my grandmother, immigrated here to the United States. She was one of the first Latina business owners in Chicago. If she were to move here now, with the kind of policies that the state of California and Supervisor Fletcher and Lawson-Remer are trying to pass, she would not have been able to open up her restaurant. El Jardín, it's still open right now in Chicago. You can look it up. I am boiled over angry. You're going to look at those business owners and their employees in the face and tell them, I'm going to pass this ordinance, and you're going to be out of a job. Hundreds of businesses and thousands of employees. Shame on you, and how dare you? I'm not. I don't want to give them an inch. I'm not looking for an exemption for airport properties. I don't want to give them an inch. This is outrageous. I've already talked to business owners and landowners, and they are beside themselves. Their mouths dropped. Like I said, one of my former employers is there, and they're employing hard-working Hispanic families. I've spoke with the Chaldeans, Middle Eastern businesses that are there, people that have escaped terrible regimes that come with barely any money in their pockets. And you're going to shut them. You're going to shut them down. This policy will shut them down. It will move them out of the city, and it will cost costs people their entire life. It is outrageous. I really, really hope that they see how this is going to affect businesses and the communities of color that they say they want to help out. They say they want to help it, but they're actively working against them with this policy. I really hope that this is a misstep. I don't believe that it is. They are far too intelligent to know that this is a misstep. But the impact that this is going to have on El Cajon will be decades. And you two on the County Board of Supervisors are permanently pushing people into poverty. That's exactly what you're doing.
Well said. One question before I make a comment. On prevailing wage, there's the wage part, and then there's a second part for vacation, health, sick, pension, training. Do you have to add those two together to what must be paid?
So at the end, I mean, well, if you look at that table, because I know you've looked at that table on the website, so that would be the fully burdened cost. Now, what I don't know, when I said the 30%, I was not including the burden cost. I was just looking at the hourly rate.
Exactly.
So I'm assuming there's a burden cost for any employee, right? But when you add additional vacation time and other sick leave requirements, then that burden rate just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
So does an employer have to pay the burdened rate or the wage rate?
Well, they have to pay the burdened rate. They have to pay what's required as a prevailing wage job.
Even if those benefits cost them less.
That's correct.
The company less, they still have to pay the premium set by the Department of Industrial Relations. Okay, I'm going to come back to that in a second. Amazon pulled out of this because of the uncertainty and impact of this proposed ordinance. I think the authors should have called this the No Work for Families ordinance. Since 2018, Amazon's paid more than $15 an hour. Now, in El Cajon, according to the 2019 census, the partial year census, the poverty rate in El Cajon was 19.3%. 19.3% of El Cajon residents lived below the federal poverty rate, which for a family of four was $26,338. That's $13 an hour for a family of four. So if you got a job at Amazon working 2,000 hours a year full time, that one job would have pulled you out of poverty. But this is the No Work for Families ordinance. Let's talk about Taylor Guitars. They added 178 jobs last year. We have a letter from their chief financial officer that about half of their staff is already people of color. So if they have any opening in their lease now to follow county regulations, and if they got to start tomorrow because that's a new regulation that's in their lease they have to follow, they got to start paying these prevailing rates. Well, let's take, for example, a carpenter. You could imagine somebody arguing Taylor Guitars should be considering those people carpenters. Nothing against carpenters per se. The burdened prevailing wage rate for carpenters, according to the Department of Industrial Relations, is $54.59. If I'm looking at the P&L of Taylor Guitars and I have a plant in Tecate, Mexico, I may close this one and move them to Tecate, Mexico, if I'm forced to pay $54.59 per hour because somebody at the county said that's fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. So I think the Amazon thing is a great example of, man, you just took away jobs from people trying to get a leg up. That's not fair. It's not fair to tell Taylor you got to pay them $54 an hour when you renew or if there's an opening in your lease now. Get out of people's business.
All right, as I said before, I don't really think this is about wages. I don't think it's about land use. I think this is a direct attack on the city of El Cajon because they don't like our politics. And they're trying to stick it in our eye. And you know what? That's fine. Call me out all day long. Trash me on TV and radio all day long. I could care less. But when we take the oath of office to become elected officials, our oath transcends how we feel about things. Our job is to take care of the people that we represent. Our job is to protect the people. And I'm saying right now that you have done an evil thing. And when I say you, I mean Tara Lawson-Remer and Nathan Fletcher. You are doing something that is purely evil. And I'm calling you out. And I am challenging either one of you right now to a debate. Let's debate this in public. Let's let everybody know what's happening. I'm available anytime. You want to go on TV, you want to go on radio, I'll find a forum. But debate me. You won't do it because you can't. You know that you have nothing to stand on. You know that not because I'm a better debater than you, but because I have the facts on my side, that I will destroy you. But I'm putting it out there anyway, and I'm guessing that you don't have the courage to do it. Okay. I guess we still have to vote, even though it's I think it's kind of perfunctory at this point. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion the City Council adopts the next resolution order opposing the proposed San Diego County No Work for Families ordinance.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming and being involved in this. I think we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back and finish the more mundane business that we have to do today. Thank you very much. The next administrative report, item 12, is a policy for proof of residency for city council members, and I'd like to ask staff to please introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor Wells and members of the City Council. If you'll recall, I'm the person who was provided, along with the city clerk, with the task of trying to develop a policy for residency requirements as one of the council's priorities that were developed back earlier this year. If you also recall, back in June, we brought to you an analysis of what that policy might be, whether we adopt an ordinance, what we can do and cannot do with respect to elections laws and qualifications of candidates and things of that nature. Just as a quick background, we pointed out at that time in June that while our charter speaks to what is required as far as the qualifications for a candidate for mayor or city council, the real issue has become what is a resident for purposes of election purposes. And I went through quite a bit of background in that report, as well as verbally and giving you the oral report on it, to point out that really what the courts look at now, as well as the elections code, is a domicile. You can have a number of residences, but you can only have one domicile as a candidate. So with that in mind, we went back and we developed, at that time the council agreed that the approach ought to be by resolution, and it ought to be something that's voluntary, so that it was not mandatory, so it couldn't become a problem if somebody challenged it in the sense of becoming elections being occupied by the state legislation. So with that in mind, we developed a resolution that's attached. It provides the policy with definitions. We hope that meet all of the questions that might arise in this policy. If you look at the resolution attached, it gives recommendations as to what a voluntary disclosure might be. We could get in greater detail, but what I fear is that these documents are intended to be available for the public to review, and we would certainly redact certain personal identifying information for purposes of avoiding identity theft or other sort of problems that arise with those types of disclosures. But there are some basic things that we believe should be able to be voluntarily provided, including deeds of your house if you own your home, copies of leases if you're a tenant, the driver's license certifications, or a copy of your driver's license that could be left on file. And utility bills from either the city, San Diego Gas and Electric, or cable companies that prove that you obtain the service at that house. Things that would be sort of indicia of domicile in that location that you're registered to vote at. Remember that the city clerk will only be looking at whether that person's registered to vote in that district or in the city in the case of the mayor. And so we won't be holding that Ms. Cortez or her successors in the future to any, although she says she's not retiring for 20 more years, but to any more analysis other than to check with the registrar of voters whether that person is in fact a registered voter at that location. So with that, I'm open to questions if you have any, and I'll turn it back over to Mayor Wells. Thank you.
Questions? Yeah, Steve.
So let's say a candidate is a law enforcement officer and doesn't wish to disclose where they live, but doesn't want to appear to the public that they're hiding something. Is their occupation shown, or is that up to them? Or
well, their occupation would be shown. In that sort of a situation, the city clerk would not disclose that resident's address for public safety purposes. So that's a good example of where one might be redacted, even in the disclosure, because somebody could come look at it. In some situations, we could consider, allowing somebody to review it if there's a challenge. So if somebody were to challenge it, then maybe that might be something that would be disclosed. But remember, your grant deeds are all public records. So if somebody wants to look up the name of a person and see in the grantor-grantee index, they can see whether they in fact own that house or at least acquired title to that property. It doesn't mean it's going to be precise up to that date. There could be a sale or transfer of the property, or it could be in the name of a trust or something like that. So the resolution mentions that if it's held in the name of a trust, then that name should be somehow recognizable so that it can be tied to that candidate if necessary.
yeah, I'm thinking more of the personal safety of somebody who wishes to be a candidate. That I suppose when you decide to run for public office, you give up some transparency,
Right.
or
You give up some sense of
confidentiality.
privacy is what you give up.
Yeah, but on the other hand, if we can appropriately mitigate that, so it's not looked at as a penalty upon somebody that they're trying to hide something.
And in fact, a candidate could choose not to, for those very reasons, say, I decline to provide you that information. And the reason for getting it, again, is not for us to determine qualification. It's just to try to avoid the campaigning issues that arise when somebody claims either carpetbagging or else that they're being untruthful about where their domicile really is.
Anybody else?
So I guess this sort of comes down to we have to trust the candidates that what they're saying is true, and it would be up to their opponents or the opponent's supporters to maybe dig up that information and prove it.
Right. This would be, if somebody's going to participate, they're going to give it to us with the understanding that the public would have an ability to look at that information. Again, we would not release it in a sense of copies or allow copies out that provide
Sure.
things like signatures on affidavits or perhaps a residential address that gives the number of the house. It might be sufficient to just simply have on it Mollison Avenue, North Mollison Avenue, and the public would have to understand that the city clerk, it's consistent with what the city clerk has received from the registrar of the voters.
Well, hopefully we don't have to go through this again.
I hope not.
Yeah, that, Mr. Foley, you brought up one of my questions is, could it be appropriate, it seems like it would be appropriate, to have a candidate just take out the number portion of their address, but have all other information with regard to the street and zip code and city. Seems like that would suffice it, so they don't know, so the public or any person of the public that has nefarious motives wouldn't know the exact house, but just the street.
Well, it's not intended that this is something we put online and keep online for the public and the world to see.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody wanted to come see it, we would make certain that there would be compliance with the Public Records Act with respect to exemption for personal information, to keep in confidence some of that information. And again, if the city clerk has received this and it matches what she or he has received from the registrar of voters, there's a high degree of confidence that things are consistent and that there should not be a question. But she would then redact any before it's. We would probably have her retain the original unredacted, but anything that's observable to the public at the request of a member of the public, we would redact those numbers perhaps and keep it confidential.
Okay. Let's see. Angela, did you receive any comments on this item?
No comments were received.
Okay. Any further discussion, or somebody like to make a motion?
I move that we accept the resolution of the City Council of the City of El Cajon, California, adopting a policy for voluntary disclosure of proof of domicile by mayor and council member candidates and appointees.
Second.
Move in second. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
Great. The third administrative report, item 13, is an update on the city's outreach and communications plan, and I'll ask our staff to tell us about this.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, Mayor and council members. Today, I will provide an update on staff's progress towards developing, or I should say refining, the city's communication, outreach, and engagement plan. In March, the City Council held a workshop to establish 5 priorities for the coming year. One of the 5 priorities was to refine the city's communication, outreach, and engagement plan, addressing what stakeholders want to receive and how to best communicate that information, as well as strategies to increase our civic engagement. To address this priority, staff analyzed past and current communication trends, hosted several focus groups, and conducted a communications and outreach survey. This information will be combined with your feedback tonight to develop a formal communications and outreach plan. As a broad overview, we communicate with property owners, residents, and businesses about a wide range of topics, including community events, recreation classes and programs, parks, city projects, private developments, volunteer opportunities, public safety, and crime prevention and disaster preparedness. We communicate this information with our constituents through a number of communication outlets, including social media, mailings, website, our city website, the city's new phone app, email notifications, press releases, and the biannual Gateway magazine. Here you can see 2 examples. This is our most recent Gateway publication and a photo, or a screenshot, I should say, of our city app. The city also provides volunteer immersion programs aimed to engage residents in all ages and interests. These programs include the Reserve Firefighter Program, Fire Explorer Program, Fire Station Open House, Fire Station Tours, and classroom visits. Similarly, the Police Department has programs such as the Reserve Police Officer Program, Teen Academy, Citizens Police Academy, Reserve Senior Volunteer, a program, the Cadet Program, Police Station Tours, and classroom visits. In addition, residents can engage local government through city council meetings, planning commission meetings, project or town hall meetings, and our Teen Coalition meetings. One of the unique ways and more recent demonstrations of how we've kind of engaged our residents is through our mobile recreation program. During the early stages of the pandemic, the city deployed the rec squad to bring park activities into neighborhoods during the stay-at-home orders. The rec squad gave away nearly 1,000 items during the pandemic, including swag bags, yoga mats, fitness dice, and coloring books, to name a few. To understand how the city is trending in its communication efforts, staff evaluated the city's outreach metrics between 2018 and 2020. The evaluation showed that the city's ongoing communication efforts have increased over the 3-year period. This includes a 76% increase in social media posts. That's an increase from 2.4 to 4.3 posts a day. A 27% increase in website traffic, a 183% increase in news releases, and a significant increase in the number of videos created from 3 to 107, and an increase in town hall and project meetings from 1 meeting in 2018 to 7 meetings in 2017. The assessment also revealed some downward trends. I think much of this is pandemic related. We saw a 67% decrease in volunteer programs and a 27% decrease in fire and PD tours and school visits. In addition, we saw our fire station open house got canceled, as many of our other community events. After analyzing our past and current trends, we hosted 6 focus groups to gather feedback from the community. We asked each focus group how and what our constituents want to hear from the city and at what types of outreach programs or events might be of interest to them. The focus groups was a pretty broad spectrum of our community. We included Arabic-speaking, Chaldean, and other Middle Eastern community members, Hispanic residents, senior service providers, businesses with the Chamber of Commerce, and the Cajon Valley School District were all focus groups for us. We received a wealth of information from these groups, including some specifics. One of the main things that we heard from several of our focus groups was to translate materials. I've included a sample of our redistricting flyer, which you guys have likely all seen, which was translated into various languages, including Arabic. Another key theme throughout our focus groups was to partner with school districts, as school districts have an established relationship with a lot of our residents, our immigrant community. Frankly, a relationship that we don't have yet. Another recommendation was to develop a What's Happening in El Cajon business theme email or weekly, monthly newsletter, to update the website more regularly, to consider using phone or text notifications to engage with our seniors, and regular and frequent and consistent communication. So, in addition, there are a few outreach event suggestions. You'll see them up here. Zoom town hall meetings was kind of consistent. Many of our focus groups asked for stuff like this. To visit the Chaldean churches, you can imagine which focus group that came from. And then coffee with the mayor and a senior advisory committee, the latter two suggested by our senior service providers. We also used an online survey to gather additional feedback. In all, we had 111 survey responses. The major takeaways for the survey were to post news stories to the city's website more frequently, promote the city app. We saw that very few people that participated in the survey knew about the app. To consider using Nextdoor for public safety updates, sharing more about city projects. This is an interesting point. Typically, I see like recreation and public safety kind of competing for the top spot, and actually city projects was equally as important to our residents, so it's something we need to talk more about. Sharing or hosting town hall meetings and city project meetings, and then finally to post and share our news more consistently. So just on a frequency basis. So overall, based on our assessment, the city has considerably increased the frequency of our communications since 2018. But I think in order to develop a plan, we're going to take the feedback that we receive from the community and then look to you guys for your feedback and use that to ultimately put together a plan.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Questions? Michelle?
So, do you know how many people have downloaded the phone app? At one time it was like 700.
Top of my head, I do have it here, but
Ms. Diaz is looking it up as we speak.
my report says 1,100, but I think it's probably higher by now. No pressure.
Yeah, TikTok, no. The only reason...
1,624.
Cool. So we have more than doubled in the last, what are we at, 9 months?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we had like 700 something when I came on board, and now we're more than double. I try and promote that all the time when I'm on social media and I'm interacting with constituents, and they're going, how do I do this and how do I do that? Download the phone app. Download the phone app. Make your reports, whether it's on speeding or whether it's homeless encampments or graffiti or whatever, and get the reports. And I mean, I use it quite frequently. My husband uses it frequently. I try to encourage everybody to use it because it's a good way to, one, track the reporting that we're doing. I do want to tell you that I enjoy the post on social media that Frank's department does, and some of the other departments do post on social media. I forward those onto my page, and I think you guys do a really good job in trying to get that out. And, you know, we can always do better. I don't know what that means, but we can always do better. So thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I love the idea of the updates on city projects. That's probably one of the top questions I get from the public. So, yeah, I would like to highlight that. And then continuing the program to get the helicopter Astra messages into text on Twitter. That has been, the public has really liked that piece of information, because sometimes it's hard to understand the helicopter, especially if they're indoors, they don't want to go outside. And then also to kind of combat wrong information that can spread like wildfire on social media so quickly. You know, it's amazing how many rumors can fly on social media. I know it's hard to comprehend that. But, yeah, I think it's good for us to get out in front of those messages to get good, reliable information to the public as quickly as possible. Obviously, I understand PD's, you know, real time. They got bigger fish to fry, but if we can keep that program going, that'd be huge. Thank you.
I think the Nextdoor app is huge. Anytime that I post something on Facebook, I might get 30 responses. When I post it on Nextdoor, it can get up to 260 responses. I believe the city has the ability to post but not view and respond. So even if it's a post, it's just weird how this Nextdoor app is like, that's where people go to talk and look and kind of thing. The significance of that is, especially when it comes to press releases from the police department, that helps calm a community when police solve a crime, substantial crimes, to know, okay, there's not somebody still out there and we're good. So that's a valuable topic, what I want to know. The building projects and the other city projects, people love that stuff. They want to know, I live in a vibrant city. So I would really love to see us post on Nextdoor. I think it's the only missing piece to what is a very comprehensive and great effort.
Okay. I appreciate you coming.
I'll just comment. We are a little. I'll just admit we're a little fearful about next door, partly because it's a little bit unknown to us, and we don't know what Pandora's box will open. We're at a point right now where we would like to do probably more video content. I think that's probably important. I really like the idea of posting more about the projects. We do a monthly project memo to the council. We could just take a project a week and just post something on all of our social media about that. As we develop this plan, we'll implement or address the next door as part of that. But we're just tell you as part of the plan, we're kind of maxing out our current staffing capacity, and so we're looking at some models to augment what we have right now. But I think we may be hitting a saturation point of what we can do. But I think there's some opportunities that we can take for your feedback today and come back with a really good plan.
You can test those. If you have one person to do it, okay, we'll pull back on this social media channel because it's not getting much engagement in trying this one.
Yeah.
To the next door thing, if you're concerned about it, then try with some very benign content like summer Friday night concerts. Who's playing this Friday?
Yeah, good point.
Okay. Thanks very much, Dave. Yeah, appreciate that.
Thanks.
Okay. Angela, did receive any speaker cards on this item?
No speaker cards for this item, sir. Thank you.
All right, no motion is needed for this item. So that's just an update. The next administrative report, item 14, is regarding the city's sign ordinance. I'll ask staff to please introduce this item. Hey, Tony.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, Council. Good afternoon. Building on the theme of City Council priority projects, back in March, the City Council had directed staff to review the city sign ordinance and report how flashing signs and light ropes in windows are regulated. And the staff came back on April 27th and presented the City Council with how the sign ordinance addresses flashing signs, which are prohibited in the city, and light ropes, which is silent. It doesn't specifically say anything about light ropes. Flashing signs, however, and light ropes are allowed in the downtown area under the downtown master plan. So the City Council in 2012, the then City Council, did make an exception and determined that those types of signs, attention-getting devices, were allowed in the downtown. At this meeting, the City Council did ask for additional information about light ropes and the flashing signs that are in the city. Staff did do some research, found little in the way of non-industry studies or municipal regulations that pertain to light brightness. I believe that Council was interested in how you regulate the brightness of lights, as well as color. The staff also reached out to the PBID and the Chamber to get some feedback from those two organizations. So they were both consulted. The PBID indicated that they did not see that these lights were a problem, and they indicated that they would like to see the code remain as is. However, the Chamber, after 2 attempts for input, did not respond to staff's request. So staff also canvassed the city. In September 4th, we thought Labor Day weekend evening, Saturday night would be a good night to go out and canvass the commercial areas and get a count of how many businesses in the city, in the commercial areas, had light ropes. And as you can see from this table here, on El Cajon Boulevard, there was 4. East Main Street, minus the downtown, there were 11 businesses with light ropes. Hamashaw North 2nd Street, staff found 4. And then the Broadway-Fletcher Parkway corridor had 10. So that's from Broadway at Main, where El Cajon Ford is, all the way to Fletcher Parkway, Navajo Commercial Shopping District, and there were 10 there. In the downtown, where they're allowed, there were 11. So in total, there were 40 identified on September 4th in the evening hours, which I did not add to the table here. Last Saturday night, staff went out to find out how many blinking signs that we have, like the flashing open signs on businesses throughout the city, and there are 25 of those. And those, because they are prohibited by the ordinance, are under code enforcement action. So with this information, we had presented in the staff report opportunities for the council if they wish to move forward on any action. And so the three alternatives that were presented is to do nothing, leave the code the way it is. Staff will continue to address blinking and flashing signs outside of the downtown area as code enforcement action. Light ropes will just be left as light ropes. The City Council can initiate a sign ordinance amendment. They can direct the Planning Commission to look into this. They can ask them to define light ropes, prohibit as window signs if that's the council's desire, as well as prohibit light ropes as building trim. Or the City Council can provide alternative direction to the staff, and that can also be passed on to the Planning Commission if the council wishes the Planning Commission to take up this issue. And staff is available to answer any questions that the council might have.
Thanks, Tony. Questions? Steve? Michelle? Yeah.
So I'm reading here that we need to be mindful of the different times a year. Typically for Thanksgiving through the first of the year, you have Christmas and Kwanzaa and like, but then, you know, like you stated here, Ramadan happens at another time of year. I personally don't like having all of the rope lights and making it look like Vegas when we go down the street, but I understand that, you know, they want to attract customers, and that's one way to do it. I guess my only concern is that, yes, we could leave it alone. Let me ask you this, did you talk to business owners and ask them how they felt about maybe not having the ability to put up rope lights and like flashing signs?
We did not directly speak with business owners. We had hoped that the business owner organizations such as East County Chamber and PBID would provide the feedback. That's
right, and they didn't. Okay. So I guess in my opinion, I don't want to be, you know, one of those people who, you know, mandate things on businesses that are just trivial in the large scheme of things. On the other hand, I'd like to see some consistency. I don't know. I'm going to defer to you guys, and you'll make a better decision. But that's just my opinion. I just don't want us to turn into, you know, the mile of cars and flashing lights and come here, and having lights go around the perimeter of the house, you know, up on the top, where the gutters are. What do you call that? You know what I'm talking about. They look like the illegal dispensaries, you know, so I don't know. I guess it's just an image thing. I would just like to see a little bit more consistency, but that's just my opinion.
I have a question for either Tony or the city manager. It may not be something you can really answer because it's quantitative, but how much of a problem is this? It doesn't, I don't see a lot of this around town, but am I missing something?
Well, the staff has not received any complaints for code enforcement action from the community on this issue. We regularly, when we identify signs that may be compromising the code, such as a can sign or a freestanding sign that has additional lights around them, those we will address. Blinking signs that are outside the downtown, those will be addressed by code enforcement as well.
Okay. All right. More questions? Steve?
You said blinking signs outside of downtown. Does that imply blinking signs are allowed inside of downtown?
That's correct. Blinking signs that, like a blinking open sign.
What about a blinking window trim?
Light ropes are allowed in downtown, as well as blinking light ropes in the downtown. Those are allowed, to be clear.
So I've got comments anytime you're ready for
yeah, no, this is
okay.
Open.
Actually, myself and Councilman Kendrick brought this forward. It was not necessarily a community-generated thing, but here's the thinking. Typically, I agree with you, Ms. Mitchell, that we'd like to not make up all these rules. you try to give the private sector to get it right on their own first. The mortgage crisis in the late 90s, whatever, when they just took advantage of people, giving money away, and now there's government regulations to not let that happen again, to let people get in trouble. So I like the private sector to get it right first before we have to step in. But in this case, I do think we have to step in. We're trying to bring people downtown to the Magnolia and to upgrade downtown. And so when they come downtown and it looks like the fun zone at the Del Mar Fair with blinking lights, that's not good for the value and the brand of what we're trying to do in El Cajon. There are places where other community theaters are. I don't see these kind of lights. The Poway Community Center of the Arts, some of the theaters downtown, things. You don't find these flashing lights and ropes in different colors there. So I think it would be consistent with other communities to not have these kind of things. Do these ropes and things add value? I don't see that they do. They're trying to say, look at me, but when you do it in blue, magenta, green, yellow, it does look like a Del Mar Fun Zone. Does it hurt a business to take these away? No, it's not going to have an impact on their sales, in my opinion, spending 30 years in marketing. I do agree with a carve-out for winter holidays. The winter holidays from Thanksgiving to the day after New Year's is a festival of lights in many different ways. And I would just say, have at it, have fun. So I would like to see this sent to the Planning Commission for those kind of direction.
Phil, did you want to say anything? Here's democracy in action. I'm going to disagree with Steve in this, and I understand that. And by the way, I think we're done with questions. If you'd like to sit, you certainly may. I don't know that this is really that big of a problem, and I think it's cultural. I think it's cultural to our county and community, and I don't feel inclined to regulate it. So I think I would be encouraged to leave things the way they are. But we can certainly vote on it and see what happens. Any other discussion or?
My only concern is that, yes, if we keep it for the winter time, I just don't want it to blow back on us that we're not being sensitive to the other communities that are here who celebrate Ramadan and alike. I don't know if they put lights up for Ramadan.
It kind of does open up a kettle of worms sometimes, doesn't it?
Exactly, and I don't know if they put up certain lights for Kwanzaa. I don't want to alienate anybody. I agree with Steve. I like to have consistency, and I think we need to bring a little bit of class to El Cajon because we fight that all the time. On the other hand, I also don't want to be this, the government thumb on the business. So I'm kind of torn.
And I would mention also that the lack of complaints from the public should say something.
Right.
But I certainly open it up to a motion.
Well, I don't know that if you don't hear complaints, that doesn't mean there's not a problem. It just means nobody's complained about it.
Okay.
So, but I think this is another one I'm going to hang myself out on a limb, one of those air purifier moments.
Oh, God.
Which I still believe in.
Well, I got to be honest, before we vote, I don't think there's any super right or super wrong answer here. I think it's a nuanced thing, and I get exactly what you're saying, and I think you're right. We should strive towards making El Cajon better. Always strive towards making it better.
I understand about the cultural thing. I'm concerned about culture clash, and trying to make things as agreeable to everybody. So this is really coming from my experience in marketing. But I'm going to make a motion to send this to Planning Commission for discussion, evaluation, and recommendation.
I second it. Okay, moved and seconded. Please vote.
And for the record, sir, there were no comments for this item.
Oh, I thought I had asked that already. Thank you.
Motion fails at this point.
Move on to the next one. Item 15 is a report on the administration of naloxone by city staff. I'll ask city manager to please introduce this item.
Mayor, before we move away from that, I should have pointed out that when you have a tie vote under our procedures and the absent member is not disqualified, the rule is that it comes back to the next available meeting. So
Oh, that's fine, yeah.
it can be discussed again at the next meeting.
I think that's fine. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, is included in the agenda package is a staff report about the city's administration of Narcan and some trends. This is really more of an informational item. We thought it was interesting. I know Mr. Goebel now administers Narcan, and we've seen him doing that, and it's something that we've noticed a significant increase, and I thought there's some value for the city council to kind of see what's happening on the streets, but also maybe for the public to recognize some of the challenges and some of the successes that we've had as a result of. So this is just a quick graph that shows how much the issuance of Narcan in the past 6 months. In 2021, it shows the fire department's issuance of in red and the police department's issuance in blue. So you can see typically the fire department issues more Narcan than the police department, but in the months of February and May, it was pretty almost evenly split between those two departments. Just note, this represents 202 issuances of Narcan. That ends up being more than one a day. 202 lives saved just in the first 6 months of 2021 through this drug. It's pretty miraculous if you think about it. There's potentially 202 people that would have, we don't know if they would have expired or passed away, but potentially 202 people would have died of overdose because of opioid. In most cases, opioid did not, because of our police department and our fire department. It's pretty miraculous, and it's something that I wanted to thank them for, and I don't think the public recognizes how much they're doing to protect the lives of our residents. We also broke down just kind of who are we administering this to, and as you can see, the majority by far are to 20 to 39-year-olds, so 65% of the issuances of Narcan are to that age group. We're also able to get some countywide data of administration of Narcan across the county. There's not a lot of great historical data on this, but you can see there's been a upward trend of its use. You can see a lot of police departments between 2016 and 2017 started carrying Narcan in their vehicles and with police officers. So there was a 45% increase in its usage that year. And every year there has been a significant in the double-digit increase year after year. Lastly, I just wanted to point out the number of fentanyl deaths that have occurred in the city of countywide. Sorry, this is countywide since 2017. You can see that in the staff report, I actually identifies opioid or all overdose deaths have increased dramatically in the last few years. Opioid deaths have increased. Fentanyl deaths increased 206% between 2019 and 2020, and it's projected we'll have 700 fentanyl-related deaths this year based on the current trends that we're going right now. The only death that dropped in this period of time was heroin. So pretty phenomenal of how much death and destruction is happening because of illegal drugs on our streets. The staff report identifies a couple of the reasons. We don't know exactly why there's such a spike in increases. I think we can all speculate. Some of the areas that we think that are occurring is, one, we know that almost every drug type that crosses the border from Mexico has some form of fentanyl involved with it. So whether it's marijuana or whether it's other types of pills, there's fentanyl lacing. We also know that there's an increase in homelessness, and so there's increase of drug use on our streets. We also know that legislation and policies that have been enacted by the state of California, such as Prop 47 and zero bail policies, have decriminalized the use of drugs. And so there's easy access and there's easy use of drugs on our city streets, and there's not much we can do in the traditional sense of how we've dealt with it in the past through law enforcement means. And lastly, we think that there may just be a less of a fear of death, of dying, because there's such a known abundance of Narcan available. And so that has taken away some of the fear that some have. That's anecdotal and that's speculative. But those are 4 reasons that we see perhaps why there's such an increase of fentanyl deaths, just because of all these reasons. So with that, staff's here to answer any questions that we have. Our police department and our fire department are here to answer any very specific questions that I wouldn't know the answers to. But we thought this was an interesting topic and something that we thought the council should be aware of.
Council, any questions? Steve?
Any statistics on the 202 in El Cajon? Were they housed, not housed?
We do not keep data on, right now, we have not traditionally kept data on ethnicity or whether they're housed or not housed. And I don't know, I can't remember if we started keeping data on that. I'm seeing, yes, we have. So we don't have any historic data to share, but it's something that we're tracking right now.
I guess where I'm leading with is if we find out that a significant number of people are housed, living in apartments or things like that, it might be worth a public education campaign.
Yeah, especially with using a heat map, you can kind of identify areas that we need to focus that attention toward. Exactly right.
Okay. More questions? I have a question that's a little bit off subject. There was an incident maybe 2 months ago where a sheriff's deputy was overcome by fentanyl fumes or inadvertently touching some of it. And right after that happened, there was a letter signed by several hundred doctors saying that you can't be overcome by fentanyl by that kind of exposure. And it became controversial. I'm not all that interested in the controversy, but I am interested in knowing what the truth is. And I think it's important that we put out some kind of a directives to our first responders so that they know how dangerous the situation is or how dangerous it's not. And do you think that you could follow up on that for us?
Follow up on ensuring that our officers are aware of the dangers, or maybe some more information about the...
More information about how dangerous it is to first responders. Can they die from inhaling fentanyl that's randomly in the air, or do they have to ingest it? So and I don't know the answer. So but I was just curious.
Yeah, certainly.
All right, Angela, do we have any speaker cards at this item?
No cards, sir.
All right,
I'm sorry, I got a couple more comments.
Oh, yeah, please. I thought you were done.
The school system doesn't really want to get involved with this because they feel they have a liability if they give Narcan to people under 18. Okay, well, that's not really helping because in August, 2 15-year-old youths in Chula Vista overdosed. One of them died. So this isn't just a problem where we think it's drug users. It can happen to your teenage kid because they could invite somebody over to a party, or your kid may go to a party. And the next thing you know, somebody's down on the ground, and this might be worth considering a public education campaign, because if those parents had that, they might have had a different outcome. I was driving around probably about 3-4 weeks ago now on Walter Way, and I clearly saw this young man overdosing. He looked like those balloon things outside of car washes that kind of flail. and he was flailing like that, and somebody was trying to hold him up because he had fallen down, hit his face, and he was hurt. I carry Narcan with me. It's a half-hour training. It's easy to do. I asked the people if they wanted me to administer it or if they wanted to. They said they did, so they're very familiar with it on the street already. It took both doses to bring this guy back, and he snapped to attention in about 2 minutes, and then he took off running because he wanted nothing to do with anybody coming. And this whole group scattered, which I hope that this young man's okay, because it delays the need for medical attention for about an hour or so, because he still has the overdose in his system. So, but I think the value of something like this for parents, which is no cost to have if they have teenagers or other at-risk people in their home, it's a no-brainer to have this kind of stuff. You cannot accidentally hurt somebody giving this. If there's no opioids in their system, it doesn't work. California's Good Samaritan laws protect you when you try to give this to somebody. You won't be sued because you gave them Narcan. So I think every parent of teenagers should have it. There's just no downside. If people think they have a false sense of trust because somebody nearby is with Narcan, that's a different issue. Let's save lives.
It's really admirable that you went to that training and did that. It was great. Okay, any other comments? Or all right, we don't need a motion for this item. I think we just accept the report, and thank you very much for the time. The last administrative report on today's agenda is item 16, which is a legislative report, and I'll ask our Assistant City Manager, Vince DiMaggio, to tell us about this.
Well, this is always a lot of fun. To look at.
I'm sure it's all good news, and we'll leave happy and confident that Sacramento is being well managed.
Absolutely. I'm going to just highlight a couple of them because the governor has until October 10th to sign bills that have been adopted, passed by both houses, and sent to him. So I will go over just a few of them because some are awaiting his signature if he decides to sign it, and some have died. And so some of them that have died are the ones that we've paid close attention to, and I want to bring those to your attention. One that has passed that we are very concerned about is SB 9. This is the one that would require, I want to emphasize these words, require local governments to ministerially, meaning no planning commission or city council, approve housing developments containing 2 residential units in single-family zoning districts. Okay, so we're very concerned that de facto creates medium-density zoning districts out of single-family zoning districts. And we also don't know how that plays out with respect to ministerially allowing granny units, second dwelling units, which is also already on the books. So there's some confusion here with how this is going to be administered. If the governor decides to sign it, we'll have to dig deeper into it. But that's awaiting the governor's signature, and of course, nothing's going to happen until he gets by today, and if he should get by today. And he still may choose to sign it during the transition period, but we have to wait until October 10th.
So just to clarify, Vince, so a single-family house, if this passes, possibly could build 2 apartments in their backyard?
We think that is one of the interpretations. It's not agreed upon that that's the only interpretation. We're going to have to look closely into it if it gets signed.
And there's not a thing that the council or the planning commission or the city staff could do about it?
Correct.
How would they go about getting approval for design standards, setbacks, all that?
Well, again, that's a good point. That may be a backdoor regulatory mechanism. If you still have to comply with the development standards of the underlying zoning district, and if you can't, then that may be a way of saying, well, I'm sorry, we don't have to give it to you if you don't comply with the development standards. Mm-hmm. So again, it takes a little bit more looking into if this actually does become law.
Okay, thank you.
Assembly Bill, or AB 333, proposed to proposes to remove burglary, looting, felony vandalism, identity fraud from crimes that define a pattern of criminal gang activity. You'll recall I brought this up before. This is one of those ones that I think confuses all of us, because all of those crimes typically are what defines criminal gang activity. This has been approved and is awaiting the governor's signature. Again, we'll have to see. AB 48 is an important piece of legislation that I've highlighted in the past. It prohibits the use of kinetic energy projectiles from use by the police department to disperse protests, assemblies, and demonstrations. Now, if this has been passed, it's on the governor's desk, if he should sign this, there really is no way that I can think of, or perhaps the police chief can think of, how you can safely disperse people that when an assembly becomes unruly without using less lethal kinetic energy projectiles. So this is going to be something fairly significant, because there really is no way to disperse crowds that are starting to outnumber the police. So this is important. SB 519 was the effort to decriminalize psychedelics that failed. So there was that was held up by the Democrats. Some more moderate Democrats held out on that, and that did not go to a vote. Let's see, AB 989. This would be the Housing Appeal Committee, where a developer can appeal your decision to a statewide housing committee, and they can overrule you. That failed. And when I say these have failed, it doesn't mean they can't come back in the new year. But it's good anytime these bad ones fail, because this was particularly onerous, I think. AB 215, this would require cities to have a mid-cycle housing element consultation with HCD, and a number of other things that would require a designated pro-housing designation from HCD in order to stay on track with their housing element numbers that they put into their document, which, as you know, we just did a housing element, and we have a number of figures in there that we have to strive to attain. That did pass. It's awaiting the governor's signature. AB 1401 would prohibit local governments from imposing minimum parking requirements. You'll recall we discussed this several months ago as well. That died, so that's good. And finally, the last one I'll highlight at this point in time is SB 556, which requires local governments to make space available on streetlight poles, traffic signal poles, utility poles, and other public infrastructure for telecommunication providers. That passed. It's ambiguous as to whether we can charge fees on that or not. It passed, and it's awaiting the governor's signature. We'll have to look closely into this one to see if it's just something, it's a giveaway, or we can actually charge for it. So I will come back after October 11th with a more comprehensive report on everything that the governor has signed and everything that has not been signed or died. And I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Questions? Thanks, Vince. That was very comprehensive. Are there any comments on this?
No comment card, sir.
Okay. Let's move to the next page. Hold on. There we go. All right, commissioner reports. There are none. Item 17 is my activity report as reported. Activities reports for council members. Councilmember Gohl.
As reported.
Councilmember Ortiz.
As reported.
And Councilmember Mitchell.
As reported.
Okay, we have a joint report from myself and from Mr. Ortiz, and I'll leave that with Mr. Ortiz.
So speaking with the city manager and a couple other veterans groups, I thought it'd be fitting to introduce the idea to bring a new veterans memorial to the city of El Cajon. The current one, while it is honoring, I think we can do better. And I think it's important to recognize that none of us would be here if it wasn't for our armed service members. The current one is right out here in the courtyard in front of the Magnolia. It doesn't seem like it's it lacks a certain respect, especially when we have concerts and events out there. So I would hope that I could get council's support in looking into getting a new location for the Veterans Memorial, determining the scale of it, funding, and next steps with it.
Great. Any questions about that?
I don't know if staff wanted to add any color.
So I think what staff's looking for, if the council wants, we can get direction or any feedback from the council on this, and then any direction, and then we'll bring back an agenda report based on what you ask us to do tonight, and we can bring that back as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts on what's best. I mean, I think that I want it to be at a protected location where it's not going to be vandalized and become a political object. So, perhaps in front of the police department. And I want it to be respectful and meaningful.
The other element that I would like to mention is, ways to fund this project. I think involving the community would be paramount, especially our first responder community and our military community. So maybe develop some strategies around funding.
Yeah, if we could work with, Phil could work with you offline and then come back and report to the council about plans. First off, we have to figure out how much we want to spend, and then where the money's going to come from. But I suspect that this community would be able to figure that out. So.
Okay. We can come back with kind of a range of options, of different options for locations, and sort of, I think the word was used, scale, and give the council something to chew on a little bit, and then from that I think get some more specific direction of how to implement.
Yeah, and it'd be nice to get some input from the community,
yeah,
and not just us. This is a memorial for everybody who's connected to the military in lots of different ways, and everybody should have an opportunity to at least weigh in.
So I wrote down, this is what I wrote down. Tell me if I'm missing anything for the analysis. Locations, scale, funding, not only costs of each of those scales, but also fundraising options, and then what the process would look like, and how to involve the community. Any other aspects that you think that you need as a council?
Sounds good. Let me see if there's any comments on this item.
No comments, sir.
Okay. See, I'm being good tonight. I ask every time. I always forget. Okay. We need to vote on this, so somebody like to make a motion?
Move to direct staff to bring back a report on possible Veterans Memorial development options.
Second.
All right. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
All right. There are no general information items on today's agenda. There are no first readings or second readings of ordinances on today's agenda. And that brings us to closed session. The city attorney will recite the title and lead us into closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council is meeting in closed session on 3 items. First one is a closed session for conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure litigation pursuant to paragraph 2 of subdivision D of Government Code section 54956.9. There's one potential case as described in the agenda. The second is actually involved the same incident, but it's under the same purposes. That's paragraph 2 of subdivision D of Government Code, section 54956.9. This happens to be, the second one happens to be the owner of a vehicle. The first one was subrogation claim of the insurance company. The third closed session is a closed session for real property negotiations under Government Code section 54956.8. Under negotiation would be price and terms for acquisition, and there is a list of 61 parcels that we are meeting with you to discuss.
All right, thank you. Can we have a motion then to adjourn the closed session? Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in just a few moments. A report on closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council met in closed session on 3 items. The first 2 were conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation under paragraph 2 of subdivision D of Government Code section 54956.9. They both involve the same collision where a driver of vehicle, Colleen Murphy, was struck by a city vehicle. One is a subrogation claim, and the other is her own first-party, or rather first-party claim against the city. Direction was given to the city's legal counsel in both of those. And then on the item 25, the closed session for conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code section 54956.8. Direction was given to the city's negotiators on all the parcels listed in the agenda.
Okay, then. This brings us to the adjournment. The regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, held this 14th day of September 2021, is adjourned until Tuesday, September 28th, 2021 at 3 o'clock p.m. Thank you all very much, and have a good 2 weeks.